Hello, welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today I'm sharing with you a panel spread which I've done in my A5 sketchbook, and I actually filmed this last May, back in like 9 months through the Daily Art Challenge, and I filmed this for a vlog which I then lost the footage for. So if you watch that vlog you'll remember that I was quite upset when I lost this footage because I filmed it all and I was really proud of how it turned out, and then I transferred it to my computer and I couldn't find it again. And then the other day I found it in a random folder, and so I thought I would share it with you today. So this is a panel spread which is done based on a narrative that I've just made up from taking these photos from a copyright-free image site. I had done a narrative piece before with panels, which was from an exercise from Emma Carlisle's Patreon, and this time I decided to source my own reference pictures and create a narrative based on those. So the images are completely random. I just found them from searching different things and I decided to piece them together, but I didn't actually end up creating like an actual story. I just thought that they would all work together, but I didn't write anything for it. I also created these panels in just 10 minutes each. I really enjoy working with a timer, and I've talked about this a lot on my channel and also in my most recent video. I just found that really helpful to have as like a set amount of time, especially when I was doing the Daily Art Challenge. I don't sketch first. I really prefer just going in with the paint, which you'll see that I'm doing here. And I'm just using quite watered down gouache, and I'm using the HIMI gouache palette for this. I also come in later on with some Tombows and some Neocolors as well as coloured pencils, and those are the mixed medias that I use on most of my spreads. So you can see I'm kind of blocking in around the shapes here. I know that there was a girl on the bottom corner and I wanted to add her in later, but I'm just doing my gouache layer first, so I'm sort of just blocking her in and going around the shape and kind of using negative space to map out where she'll be, and then just filling in the space around it before I come in later with all of the details. It always looks quite messy at this point, and I often think that it won't come together, but the details layer that I add on after with like the pens and the Neocolors and the pencils really help bring it all together. So although I used to feel quite disheartened at this point, I have learned that with the process it does come together in the end. The colours that I'm using here are quite earthy and muted, but I do brighten that up again using these lovely bright Neocolors. And I use these again in a really loose fashion, but it's also because I am under the timer. So like I said, I did all of these in 10 minutes, and it was definitely harder on this bigger piece, and this panel is my least favourite, simply because it is quite loose and messy, probably a bit too loose for me, even though I'm always trying to capture sort of energy from the looseness. This was a little bit too far for me, so I definitely think that the smaller panels were definitely more successful. So I do use a mix of Tombows and Ecoline brush pens here, and I often get a lot of questions about layering on top of gouache and if it ruins the pens. So because gouache is water activated, it does come up sometimes with the Tombows when I'm working on top, but the way that I use the pens means like I'm not using them for big blocks of colour over the gouache. I tend to use them just as details for extra texture. So if it does pick up the gouache, I tend to wipe the pen afterwards just on a scrap piece of paper to get rid of any of the paint that has gotten on the nib, and that cleans it off fine. And I don't find that it's ever a problem, and it's never dried out my pens, especially if I clean them quickly on the scrap piece of paper. I also make sure to use darker colours on top of lighter colours. It obviously wouldn't work if I was using a lighter Tombow over a darker gouache base. So I've moved on to the next 10-minute panel here, which is smaller than the one on the left, but it's not the smallest one I've got. And for this one I'm using some gouache first, then going in with more brush pen, and then back to gouache. So I'm just sort of simplifying the reference image and putting down block shapes, and I find just alternating between the pens and the paint really helps me to work out what I'm drawing, because obviously I don't have the sketch there to work from. I wanted this to be really nice and light, so I have put the lighter colours in first, and then as you'll see I'm slowly coming in with the darker tones. So I'm using the darker green here, and then later on I'll add in some more darker tones for the trunks and the branches above. I hold my Tombow pens quite loosely at the end, and again that's for more texture, and because I am under a time, I'm just very aware that I don't have all the time in the world to add all the details, and so just using it in this scribbly way helps me feel like I'm getting a lot more colour down. And because gouache is quite easy to stay wet, I'm just alternating between my pens and my paintbrush, and I really enjoy working in that way. So you can see I'm coming in with the darker tones here, just to add in some of the trees in the distance. This actually was quite a complicated reference picture, especially for the timer, but it's kind of a case of having to work out what's important to include and how to show that light and what's going on in the picture without including all of the details. And I do talk a little bit more about working fast in my most recent Patreon video, which is a walkthrough, and I create 2 pieces in my sketchbook for a 5-minute and a 10-minute timer. Because I really am an advocate for working fast, I think it really helps me as an artist. So if you are interested in that video, I will leave a link down below, and that's available on my Sketch Club tier. So this is where I'm coming in with my coloured pencils, and again, you can see how messy and scribbly it is, but I think it's obvious that these trees are in the foreground because I'm adding in the darker tones. And even though it is messy, it definitely has a lot of texture, and you can still tell what everything is. I was really happy with the light from behind. You can kind of see where the sunlight is hitting the woodland, and I was really happy with how magical that felt just because of the light there. It probably could have done with some sort of focus in there, but because it works as a full spread, I think there's enough going on in the page that it didn't matter that there's no story. So here I'm working on one of the smaller panels, which was just a rucksack. My narrative idea was that there was the girl on the left, and she was off on an adventure. She found this beautiful view and then ventured into the forest, which is obviously the panel on the top right. And I just wanted to add more elements to the story that, she was off on an adventure, so I decided to add in this rucksack, which again, I searched for all these images separately on the copyright-free site. So I searched mountain view, woodland, and then rucksack, and then a wildlife one for the last one, just to add a bit more context, even though there isn't actually a story. For this one, because there is more details with the rucksack, and because it's such a small panel for 10 minutes, I knew I could take my time a bit more, and so I did feel more comfortable using my pencils. Because there's way more detail here that I thought needed to be included, it worked well for the smaller panel, and then I can add in my looser pens and gouache around the backpack once that main element had been added in. So I'm trying to tie all these panels together by using similar colours. I've got my palette sheets to the right where I've got all the gouache, and I haven't mixed new greens, I'm just re-wetting the greens I already mixed for the other panels, and that helps keep things cohesive. I've used that sort of pink neo colour on the ground there, which ties in with the other panels where I've used them, and although this is a brand new colour combination in terms of the blue and the orange, I think it all ties together. It's a really nice warming colour palette with these brighter pops of blue, and I think that works really nicely. So for the final one, you can see here I am slightly sketching in a very light base, and that's because I was drawing something that I'm not very comfortable with, and that was this tiny little squirrel, and I wanted to make sure that that was right because I wanted it to be obvious what it is. So you see I'm being a little bit lighter with the gouache here, and then I come in with more darker tones later on. Again, this is the smaller panel, so I've got a little bit more time to add in all my details, and I do come in with my coloured pencils to really refine this, because at the moment it's obviously very basic shapes and I really want it to be obvious what's going on there. So in the reference picture there was a squirrel that was leaning down from this bird box and reaching out to a hand, and I just thought that was a really nice way to again include the girl on the left and add in an extra little character. I'm not very comfortable drawing with animals, so this was out of my comfort zone, and again I don't think this is one of my favourite panels, but overall I think it does tie in with the others, and I liked that I had another tree there which linked with the one above, so it's kind of obvious that it's all in the same setting. I'm still keeping the really loose marks, again to tie it all in together. Although I did have more time on this one, I still wanted it to feel the same style, and so I still come in with my Neo colours just to add in more colours behind. And I don't think I used the full 10 minutes on this panel, but you can see I'm just adding more to it, even though it probably didn't need it. It did work better with the contrast of that darker brown Tombow. So I'm just adding in that these panels took 10 minutes because I find that really helpful when I'm looking back. And this is how the final spread turned out. So I really hope you enjoyed watching this process video, and I will see you next Sunday with a new video. Have a lovely week, and I will see you then. See you later.